Hi, Harris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very good, very good. Harris, thanks for joining us today and talking to us a little bit about Windows 7 end of life and Windows 10, which is on the horizon for a lot of people. It turns out that there's a whole lot more Windows 7 out there in the wild than a lot of people thought.
There certainly is,
And the news,
unfortunately.
the news in January, or the cutoff date in January, is kind of hitting people a little bit harder than some of them anticipated. So tell us a little bit about that. What does it mean? Why should people care? And especially if their Windows 7 OSs are ticking away merrily, is this something that can be ignored? Maybe is another way of asking that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's a good question, and the most obvious issue around end of life is, of course, the supportability and security updates for Windows 7. The key thing with end of life is Microsoft's no longer making those updates available. So, as new security vulnerabilities are discovered in Windows 7, and there are a number of them, organizations need to make sure that they're patched and protected. So that's the obvious reason. Okay, but I think there's some other maybe less technical reasons that customers should consider. So I think the second reason is, the workforce is changing and it's getting younger. And, younger people, when they come to work, have a certain expectation around the type of tools that they're going to receive in order to be able to do their job. And, Windows 7 was built, over a decade ago, and doesn't really meet those expectations in terms of, younger workers. And so if attracting and retaining talent is a key requirement, I think that's something to really consider. And I think the final reason is, there's a lot of new form factors out there for devices these days that didn't exist when Windows 7 was created. Tablets, touch, convertibles, things like that. Windows 7 was not built for those things at all. And so, really, if you want to be able to take advantage of any of these new devices and the greater mobility that they enable, you really have to have an operating system that was built for that reality.
Yeah. Now you mentioned this new hardware. Isn't there a downside to that too? Doesn't it mean that people that may not have planned for a major hardware investment are now being forced to run out and do a whole bunch of hardware upgrades?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a really common misconception that customers think that if they have older hardware, that they won't be able to run a newer operating system. And that may have been true historically in the past, where new operating systems mean additional demands on hardware. It was certainly true in the Windows Vista era, but Microsoft has done a lot of great engineering work here, and in the vast majority of cases, Windows 10 will run extremely well on Windows 7 hardware. And Microsoft has realized that customers, are not necessarily going to throw out a functioning device just simply so that they can upgrade to Windows 10. And so we've lots of customers who have successfully moved to Windows 7 on existing hardware and had as good, if not better, performance than they had on Windows 7.
Wow. Yeah. I guess we might be finally reaching an era where the operating system, each subsequent operating system doesn't necessarily need an entirely new generation of hardware to keep things going and live up to those expectations.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think, Microsoft and other vendors have tried that in the past, and they realized that that's not the way that customers buy.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of disruption are we talking about? Let's say we've committed to this journey and we've done some upgrades and some not. And now what should we anticipate in sort of a change
Yeah. Well,
perspective?
I think if you implement any new technology, there's always a change management element to it, right? And I think there's always a period where people adjust to that. And there's been a lot of studies done on this, and what has been found is that in the first 2 to 3 weeks of introducing a new technology, there is going to be somewhat of a dip in productivity as people learn the new system, right? But what these studies show is that after that 2 to 3 week period, that people adapt to the new technology and they start to take advantage of the productivity benefits. And what happens is they end up more productive after that transition period than they were before. So I think that's really, important to say, yes, there is a change element and we have to plan for that, but it's not going to be, a catastrophically negative impact. I think
Hmm.
the other thing too is there's a phenomenal amount of great online training out there that Microsoft releases for free. And many organizations have found that they don't have to take their whole company away from work. and put them in a classroom and train them for days and days or weeks even, that a lot of the training can be done self-service, and that actually works very well for users so that they can do it on their own time. And also, given the current circumstance where many of us are not able to come into an office safely, I think that, having that online training available is really beneficial. And I think finally, the last piece that's really important is many of our employees and end users are already running Windows 10 at home because it's been out for a number of years. And so in many cases, organizations that planned for significant amounts of training found that the amount of training that they had to do is actually minimized because users have trained themselves, because Windows 10 is no longer brand new.
So I think the lesson here is wait 12 or 15 years before you upgrade any of your software to save money on training.
Well, that's right. In many cases, users have borne the cost of training themselves, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, very good. Okay, while we're on the topic of disruption, I guess, and potential risk, what about applications? Now, before we get into this, we'll let the viewers know that we're going to do a separate topic on, or a separate version of this topic where we're going to be focusing on technical questions and the technical audience. So we don't need to get too deep into it, but just from a broad perspective, what should I be thinking about in terms of old applications and whether or not they'll run?
Yeah, I think there's two key things that I can suggest here for anyone looking to move to Windows 10. Number one, Microsoft's done a phenomenal job from an engineering standpoint of ensuring 99% or greater of all applications in the world that run on Windows 7 will run successfully on Windows 10. Wow. Right? That was their commitment, and they have achieved that or greater, which is pretty impressive. And they've also invested in a number of tools that you can run to assess the compatibility of your applications before you move ahead with a migration, so that you can know what types of issues that you're dealing with and how complex they'll be. But I think that the short answer is, we've gone through many generations of upgrades before, and my customers have had phenomenal success moving their legacy apps to run on Windows 10 seamlessly.
Yeah, the more you talk about this, the more it sounds like Microsoft has taken a more accommodating approach to this upgrade. I can remember upgrades from OS to OS that were not nearly as streamlined as this sounds, or as forgiving.
That's right. I certainly worked through a lot of those. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, how do we buy this? Let's say that we're totally sold at this point. Tell us what some of our options are in terms of ways to purchase and license versions.
Yeah, well, Microsoft has always had the traditional way of buying Windows 10, which is a per device license. So, many people purchase Windows 10 Professional for their business through what's called the OEM channel, meaning you get it when you buy a computer, okay? For existing hardware that's running Windows 7, there are a number of upgrade options available. So there's the traditional per device license that's always existed, that you can buy an upgrade for each device that you have, each PC, each notebook, etc. But Microsoft's introduced a new option, which I think is really exciting, which is a per user subscription-based license of Windows 10 that you can buy either standalone, or you can buy it as part of a larger suite called Microsoft 365, which includes Windows 10, Office 365, which is a suite of productivity tools, and the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, which is a set of security and management tools for the cloud. So those three solutions can be purchased together, and obviously the products are all meant to work together, and they're also discounted if you buy them in the suite. So the benefit of buying a per user license is that you may have users who have multiple devices. Perhaps they have a device at work, they have a device at home, maybe they have a tablet. Previously you'd have to buy a license for each of those devices individually, which could become prohibitively expensive. But with this per user license, you can cover that user's scenario across their devices for one low fee. And it brings Windows into the fold of Microsoft's other cloud services, which are also per user. So, again, we don't want to charge users extras for getting email on the phone versus their PC. We want to do the exact same thing for Windows 10.
Got it. All right. That sounds pretty straightforward. I guess the last question I've got is around something called Windows 10 Enterprise. How does that differ from Pro?
Yeah. So, I mentioned before, Windows 10 Pro is typically what you would purchase with a PC, or you can, of course, upgrade to it. Windows 10 Enterprise is only available from Microsoft. It doesn't come, pre-installed unless you have a specific arrangement with your OEM. And it adds some additional features to Windows 10 around security and management and compliance. And really the benefit of that is it helps organizations remove the need for a lot of third-party utilities that they previously needed to purchase, which could add up and become very expensive. So one example of that is the ability to virtualize your applications and make them more portable. That's one of the included benefits that come with Windows 10 Enterprise. And so it can save a lot of organizations a cost by licensing it that way. And there's a number of good studies that kind of show the ROI, which can be quite significant.
Great. All right. Well, this sounds like mainly good news. This sounds like a smoother ride than I think certainly I was anticipating, and probably a lot of our audience was anticipating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the benefit of if you contact Amplify, you can work with us and we can help tailor a solution to your specific need.
Outstanding. All right. Thanks so much, Harris.
Thanks a lot. Nice to talk to you. Bye.